After nearly 40 days of relentless siege, the air around Zhiji's fortress hung heavy with smoke and dust. The defenders, exhausted and desperate, fought on behind their crumbling walls. But when the defenses could hold no longer, the storming began in a roar of drums and steel. The Han Chinese finally stormed the fortress of their rebels, poured inside, and brought the stronghold of the Xiongnu nomadic people to ruin. As they entered, they noticed something very unusual. Shields overlapping like fish scales, double palisades, and, most importantly, a few faces that looked nothing like any steppe tribe the Chinese were used to fighting. Unfamiliar enough that they made it into the chronicles. These strange faces at the Battle of Zhizhi may have arrived all the way from the Mediterranean. Some historians believe these were Romans. But how did they even get here? Were they lost? Hired for battle? Or wearing a disguise history forgot to take off? To even guess, we have to rewind through a chain of events that ties two faraway empires together with one long thread. The Silk Road. Toward the end of classical antiquity, the West produced a self-confident superpower, the Roman Republic, which later gradually transformed to the Roman Empire, saw itself as the world's center, unmatched in power, order, and science. However, far to the east was a state just as sophisticated and, in sheer landmass, even larger. This was the Chinese Han Dynasty. They were separated by deserts, mountains, and politics, yet craved each other's luxuries. Along the bustling Silk Road, China sent silk to the west, while Rome exported wine and glassware in return. Goods moved constantly between the two empires, sometimes in great quantities. At first glance, this might suggest that Romans and Chinese were in regular contact and knew each other well. Not quite. Trade didn't flow in a straight line. It spread like a web across deserts and mountains, where powerful middlemen, especially the Parthians in Persia, controlled the crossroads. They were the ones who moved the goods, but more importantly, they understood something simple and powerful. Whoever controls the route controls the profit. So, they encouraged mystery to anyone daring this journey. To Roman envoys, they spoke of endless, impassable deserts. To Chinese envoys, they warned of treacherous seas. When in reality, Roman ships were already sailing to India ports in just a few months. The Silk Road was never a single road. It was a tangled web, and at its key junctions sat brokers who could divert caravans, misplace messages, or even plunder them outright. The result was a fog of second-hand tales, reaching the citizens of both empires only through merchants, yet fascinating enough to be preserved in written records. In China, records spoke of a distant western land called Daqin. In Rome, writers described a mysterious place of silk they named Serica. Beyond that, real knowledge was scarce, and genuine contact was rare, often more accident than intention. Now, keep your eye on the Silk Road, because Rome had rivals, and one of them, the Parthian Empire, sat right on the arteries that carried silk and silver. In 53 BCE, Rome marched east into Parthian territory in pursuit of glory and gold. They had the most disciplined army on earth, and in their minds, Beating some nomad descendants wouldn't be much of a challenge. But on the flat plains of Mesopotamia, Rome discovered just how wrong they were. Roman legions faced something they weren't built to overcome. Swarms of horse archers, armored cataphracts, and arrows raining endlessly. Very quickly, Rome was outmaneuvered, their general cut down, their army broken. Tens of thousands were captured. Normally, they would have ended up in chains and sold for labor. But here the story twists and starts to turn a bit murky. Ancient reports whisper that these Romans weren't sold at all. Instead, they were resettled, sent deep into the Parthian East, to a remote region called Margiana. And this is where the trail turns strange. Who did they become? Farmers? Soldiers? Ghosts swallowed by history? The problem is, the Parthians weren't great record keepers. They left behind little more than coins and scattered mentions in other people's histories. Until, that is, you shift your gaze farther east, where Chinese chronicles speak of something curious. And this brings us back to that skirmish at Fortress Zhizhi. In 36 BCE, across the steppe, a Xiongnu ruler named Zhizhi tried to build his own kingdom. The Xiongnu were powerful nomads, known for fast horses and sudden raids. Zhizhi forced nearby tribes to obey him and took a slice of Silk Road traffic. For the Han Dynasty, that was a problem. Many of those tribes were their allies, and Zhizhi's grip on the trade routes cut into China's economy. So the Han launched a long expedition westward to bring him down. Their target was his fortress, near what's now Kazakhstan. Eventually, they crushed Zhizhi's power and scattered his tribes. But the real story isn't in the victory itself. It's in what the Han soldiers said they saw behind the fortress walls. The outer defenses were made of rammed earth, as expected. But inside, there was another layer: wooden palisades. And behind them, organized infantry fought in disciplined ranks. Their shields overlapped, like fish scales. To Chinese eyes, this was something entirely unfamiliar. For centuries, no one really stopped to question these strange fish scale formations described in the old records. But in 1957, a scholar named Homer H. Dubbs looked closer and tried to connect the dots. To him, these overlapping lines of shields sounded like the Roman Testudo, or the turtle formation, where shields locked together to stop arrows. The double fence looked like Western fieldworks used to slow assaults. So he asked the question: could Roman prisoners of war captured at Carrhae in 53 BCE have been dragged eastward and forced to fight again? This time at the fortress of Zhizhi in 36 BCE. And the picture is simple to imagine. Imagine soldiers stranded thousands of miles from home with nothing left but their military training. What else would they sell to survive? But a strong picture isn't proof, and many questions remained. Most importantly, what happened to these foreigners after their defeat at the Battle of Zhizhi? Now, the Han Dynasty had codified laws that governed how captives were handled. Most would be resettled within Han territory, often as laborers or farmers. But for skilled fighters, like those remembered for the fish scale shield formation, the story was different. They were relocated to frontier garrisons, placed under close supervision and used as border troops for the empire. Records say these warriors were resettled in Lijian, in what's now Gansu province in northwestern China. But this is where their story ends. The chronicles simply stop mentioning them. But why? Well, that comes down to how ancient record-keeping worked. They weren't interested in the lives of absorbed foreigners, focusing instead on victories, dynastic order, and imperial authority, not the fate of mercenaries. But the case isn't closed yet. We're still left with the burning question. Were these fighters actually Romans? Well, the overlapping shield tactics were something the Romans perfected, but they weren't the only ones in the region who used them. To understand where else this style might have come from, we need to look further back in time. A few centuries earlier, Alexander the Great and his Macedonian army had crushed the Persian Empire and pushed their borders deep into Central Asia. They did this with their famous Phalanx formation, where shields overlapped and spears bristled out in front. His empire was short-lived, but after his death, it fractured into smaller Greek kingdoms, what we now call the Hellenistic kingdoms. Some of these were still around when the events at Zhizhi took place. That means the army at the fortress could have been Indo-Greek or Greco-Bactrian troops mixed with steppe tribes. But here's the puzzle. If Greek kingdoms lasted more than 3 centuries in the region, why aren't there more sources that describe such warfare? So were they Romans, Greeks, or someone else entirely? Well, timing might give us the best clue. Carrhae happened in 53 BCE. Zhizhi fell in 36 BCE, only 17 years apart. That time frame sounds reasonable for young captives to still be fighting, moved from place to place, and eventually recruited under a new banner. And for those who had no way home, survival meant fighting for whoever fed them, and whoever kept them alive.